Welcome everyone, oh dear educators from all over the world, from Australia to China to Europe to the Middle East to the Gulf countries to the States. Welcome all to the 11th webinar hosted by Huan Quan Village. And our today's guest is the international cultural philanthropist, Mr. Giandomenico Pandovan. Welcome, Mr. Pandovan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
We're honored with your presence today, Mr. Pandovan. And today, Mr. Pandovan is going to tackle how culture and cultural exchange can nurture the 21st century learner-student profile traits, and especially creativity, innovation, and global mindedness. And as I said, please make sure you're on mute mode. And during the webinar, you can post your questions in the Zoom chat box. And afterwards, we are going to give you time for live questions too. And Mr. Pandovan will be more than happy to answer all the questions in the Zoom chat box. Thank you very much for attending today. And we're going to start now with Mr. Pandovan. So today's topic, as I said, is how culture and cultural exchange can nurture the 21st century learner-student profile traits, and especially creativity, innovation, and global mindedness, with our great guest, Mr. Giandomenico Pandovan. Mr. Pandovan is the co-founder of the YB Culture Exchange, a private company based in Beijing, China, that works in the field of cultural projects and exchanges between China and Western countries. Mr. Pandovan is an international cultural harmony, and cultural exchange philanthropist, serving the mission of cultural education, experience in the field of cross-cultural programs, especially related to visual arts. Before 2017, the year when he co-founded YB Culture Exchange, he worked for different companies in China, Australia, and Italy in the field of international business and cultural programs, gaining experience in working in different and multicultural environments. Welcome, Mr. Pandovan, for our 11th webinar hosted today by, of course, great Huan Quan Village, who is an educational hub serving the sacred mission of education worldwide. I will start with a quote by Maria Montessori: "Culture and education have no bounds or limits. Now, man is in a phase in which he must decide for himself how far he can proceed in the culture that belongs to the whole of humanity," by our great educator, God bless his soul, Maria Montessori. Welcome, Mr. Pandovan, for today. We're honored with your presence.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you for having me.
The first question, Mr. Pandovan, I'm going to ask you is, what are, in your opinion, the different 21st century learner profile traits that cultural education and exchange can nurture within our students?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think there are so many different traits actually that it could be given to the students, especially in the 21st centuries. But I would find one straight line that it could be a comprehensive line, and that includes so many actually different traits. The main one that I think it could be is like first starting from one step that is about knowing your students, that understand your students needs, understand your students' diversities. Then try to go deeper and then create a very individual profile, a single profile of every single student, and working on these different profiles, thinking, of course, about how can you develop actually every single student based on their diversities. As you can see, in fact, in this slide that I think is a wonderful slide that you can find in learner profile model, there are all in different blocks amazing things that you can be put it and can be traits actually for every single student, like independent learner, critical and positive thinker, and then all connected to each other. And then at the end, you can arrive to a point, to a focus point, so that actually where I am, where I try to be, where I try to put myself through the company for what I'm doing, is like to create this international minded citizen. That means someone that can think global, actually can act also globally, thinking about the world that we are, and then try to understand all the different diversities and the facts and everything that is surrounding you and surrounding the single students. That's why I think international mindedness is kind of focus point that you have to put yourself and make the students understand that. So I think there is a great connection between international minded citizen, yeah, and exactly, and cultural education and exchange. And from my point of view, cultural education exchange is incredibly important because it's a kind of center block that can connect so many different squares, many different paths that you can take with the students. Become more international, use the cultural exchange for the knowledge and artists, create a team spirit. So more educational exchanges that you get from different cultures can create this team spirits and this work team among all the students. More focus and then create a mind that is more culturally in harmony actually with different peoples and people from different parts of the world. That again, like from my point of view, is first start to know your students, then build up block by block to create a more educated and global citizen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Pandovan. I agree with you 100%. That's why I want to just overview with our educators the different major milestones needed to nurture the 21st century learner profile traits. Of course, the first milestone will be the country's identity and culture. Global mindedness and cultural exchange are two crucial layers in our curriculum. It must play a major role in our multi-layered curriculum. Those are major important layers in the curriculum. Of course, we need to make sure to reinforce the nurturing of the 21st century trait within the student, because by introducing and integrating culture and cultural identity and country's identity and global mindedness and cultural exchange and harmony, automatically we reinforce the nurturing, as you said, of the 21st century learner profile traits. And of course, those learner profile traits are very, very important for us, for the students, to overcome the 21st century changes, so the students can be apt for today and ready for tomorrow and become real lifelong learners and 21st century leaders, leading their life to a series of successes. That's why country's identity, country's culture, global mindedness, cultural exchange, those two main layers of the curriculum, those two main pillars of the learning and facilitating environment are crucial today to reach, to make sure that our students are really apt for today and ready for tomorrow, as you said, Mr. Pandovan. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
My next question, Mr. Pandovan, will be about today. As we all know, global mindedness became one of the major pillars and objectives in education. How can cultural exchange and education and harmony reinforce the global mindedness pillar of education, in your opinion?
Yeah, I always start answer like these questions like starting from a little bit of history, like try to understand and try to tell you like that how is important the cultural exchange, how is important, why is a pillar for knowledge and prosperity, as you can read it from this slide. This is throughout all the history of the humanity. That's why you can find it like just 3 examples, starting from the Silk Road, all on the way of the Silk Road, you can find traits, exchanges at the cultural level, the business level, but all these things like bring it up, knowledge, prosperities, all along the way, where the people were able to meet up and exchange ideas, goods, everything, you can find a development and more education, more prosperity. And then 2 really important people, very important one in our history, in our global history. One is Da Vinci. Of course, everyone knows Da Vinci. It's like just to point it out how a mind that is really curious, that it was curious about everything around the world, that everything that it was happening about different topics, different things that is happening in their life. That's why this makes his mind a great mind. But also the ability to move on, not only staying in this really small place that is from Vinci, really small village actually nearby Florence. I was able to move Florence, Milan period, and then Vienna, France. And also this exchange and in curiosity made him like one of the greatest minds of throughout all our history. And then a little bit and one more example about art and business minded, a global one actually, it was Tiziano Vecellio. Tiziano Vecellio, Titian, the great Titian and the great painter, was not only a painter, he was a global mind itself. Why? Why? Because he started from a really small village in the north of Italy, like Pieve di Cadore, and then he was able to move on all Europe. Why? Because he was a businessman first, an open-minded person that he was able to move his business to the next level. Thinking about, I cannot only stay in my really small place and make business here and work here, despite I'm a great painter, but I need to move. I need to understand more what's happening in the world, by the time, of course, Europe. Then he was able to move Venice, France, Spain, and work for the greatest kings and richest families back to his time. Then again, thinking more global and using the cultural exchange can develop yourself, can make yourself and your business, of course, like go to the next level. From my point of view, I use the art, that in fact you can find probably the next slide. I use the art as a universal language and tool for my exchanges. I focus more on art at a different level. I was doing like music, visual art, and also something a little bit of sport, but mainly focus on art because the universal language tool is something that we need. We feel since we were little and all since humanity was born. And that's why you can find this beautiful picture from a prehistoric cave. There is this native actually need of art, and what art make the art actually develop during all the history. It was the exchange, it was the development, as I told about Titian, as I told about Da Vinci or other greatest artists of the world. All the exchanges made the art became greater and greater and greater. That's why I'm trying to put myself here, as we saw before, in cultural exchanges, global mind, focus on art.
Thank you very much, Mr. Padovan, and I agree with you 100%. And that's why, as we see here in the multi-layered curricular model that we talked about it with Mr. Fouad and our international speakers for many webinars in the last 4 or 5 months. Global mindedness, culture, and cultural harmony are major layers as with the multi-layered curriculum. As you see, they're very, very important that culture and globalness, they play, as we say, a major role, because if the students must represent all the different pillars needed to face, as we said, the 21st century challenges and overcome them, they need global mindedness, they need culture, they need cultural harmony. If the students wants to really explore, discover, and that's our aim, explore, discover, manipulate, and distinguish all the different fields and perspectives, covering and guiding their required and skills. Again, they need mainly all the layers and mainly global mindedness, cultural harmony, culture, and cultural exchange, and their country's culture too. If they want the students to be engaged in designing and implementing their own learning experience so that they become lifelong learners, not just they learn and then after 1 or 2 months they forget everything. And again, we need the different layers, and mainly we need culture, cultural harmony, and cultural exchange, global mindedness. If the students, we want them to be able to invest, and that's our aim, and use the required skills to improve their life, again, we need those layers. Again, if we want our teachers to become facilitators, don't teach anymore, but facilitate, which is a much more difficult process, facilitate the process of acquiring and acquiring the different knowledge and skills. Again, we need the different layers, and mainly global mindedness, culture, and cultural harmony. And that's why, as you said, it's a very, very important today that we know that global mindedness and cultural harmony are major layers in the curriculum, and they help the student reach their goals. Now, my next question, Mr. Padovan, will be what type of extracurricular activities can schools organize to reinforce cultural exchange and harmony within their students?
Right. From my point of view, like all the schools, they should organize any kind of cultural exchange that will be useful and following up on their mission and the vision of every single school, based on the resources, based on the budget, based on the students, as we say, like, because you need to know your students first. Then starting from some online programs and some online projects with other schools, with other institutions, with other organizations that you can do it. And of course, as this pandemic taught us how important it became like the online programs and how you can be started, you can do so much also online in this very moment. But of course, afterwards, you have to take the next step, to go to physical exchanges and do this exchange with other students and at the physical level offline, not anymore only online. And another part that I really suggest is to be part of international competitions and programs, like just scroll, look around, like what's happening in different parts of the world, and if it fits you, fits your student, fits your school, fits your program, like do it, definitely. That's why I put in some examples of beautiful programs that was won by some students in Italy, that we participated in this NASA Space Action Challenge organized by NASA and MIT, and we were able to be part and actually win and then go to the last part of this program, like of course to the USA. Then, and actually also I added a program that we were running. That's why you can see from on the left side of your screen, like a nice OT exchange that we have done between the Chinese and Italian team. Really, the school started at the beginning like to look for that, and then we were in the middle of this. That's why we did some suggestions, and we organized this exchange based on what the school's requirements and fit, because the school was really focused on sport, this middle school in Beijing. And then we started to talk online, and then we go into physical. That means we bring it up to the students from China, like different classes, and then we move on these classes to Italy. That's why we was this beautiful exchange between the Chinese students middle, primary, at the beginning of the middle school, and they played together. But it was not only playing, it was also teamwork that they've done. In fact, you can see probably for the next slide, this group of students who were actually creating a group. And despite we were not able actually to talk to each other because one group speak English, another group speak Italian, and their English was quite limited back to the time for sure. But the sport actually bring them together, bring them like a great group. Of course, as you can see, it was not only a program to make them understand how they play, what are the differences between Italian ice hockey, Chinese ice hockey, but also it was an opportunity to do this exchange. And they ran this program. It was a really beautiful one. That's why sport, I think, is another universal language tool that you can use it, and not only art, also, there is also the sport. That's why I had another case that we ran a few years ago. It was a case in a beautiful campus, but it was called Giocampus in Parma, in Italy, where it was a public and private initiative. We bring up so many different sports and schools from all the different levels, from primary till the high school. With that, all the students were able to mix up and to create different programs also by themselves. And this was a great opportunity for them to know each other, to understand how the different schools work, how they run the different programs related to sport in this case. Also was a moment of food education, because food is definitely related to sport. Yes. And it was a teaching to them about how to eat healthy, to keep healthy, what the food is good for you, based on your age, based on the sport you're practicing, and so on. And so we bring it up also a group of Chinese students on the middle school age to be part of this program. It was just for one day in that case, but it was another great opportunity for the students to mix up, to understand each other, to create a small group, even for a very short time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So
thank you.
That's why, of course, we can summarize and say that today the extracurriculars activities framework, reinforcing culture and cultural exchange culture, is very, very important. And that's why if we talk about culture and cultural harmony, we see that that's one of the main pillars helping create our extracurricular reflective havens, taking students to satellite learning, exploring areas, so where they can explore, they can be more close to the nature, more close to different aspects, as you said, and they can then acquire more knowledge and skills to become lifelong learners. Plus, when we talk about cultural harmony, this is also the basis to have international virtual combined classrooms. It will help having via online nowadays, as you know, Mr. Padovan, a lot of classrooms are combined with different sister schools. We can have internship satellite learning areas in which we can send our students for 4 weeks, 6 weeks at the grade 8 and 9 to spend, to work for 4 or 5 hours daily in different places. This will again need culture, exchange culture as a basis for that, country's identity. So all this within a framework, classroom without borders, that we talked about in 3 months ago, in which we know that classroom without borders is very, very important. And that's why here, cultural exchange and cultural harmony will play a major role to create classroom without borders today in our schools. Because imagine the students confined in their classrooms 75–80% of the time, they cannot create, they cannot be innovative. So creativity, innovation needs classroom without borders. Classroom without borders that will give you learning by doing, that will give you creativity, that will nurture 21st century learner profile, that will create an extra-curricular activities, haven, push layer, and real life-based learning. Those, the basis of it is culture, cultural exchange, and cultural harmony will help the very important way to reach this important goal of classroom without borders. So my next question, my next one is going to be about the different methods. As an international cultural harmony and exchange philanthropist, in your opinion, what are the different methods and means to establish an international cultural harmony environment within schools, universities, and educational entities?
From my point of view, from my experience, that could be. So there are so many different methods, of course, that you can apply to your school, to your students, to your environment, and really focusing on, of course, on what is local, of course, on your experience and what you have on the ground. I think there is one thing that is a kind of like a basic, actually, the fundamental things about all the method to establish a cultural harmonious environment. That is promoting the team and the collaboration among all the students, motivating the students, creating this a positive attitude. A positive attitude among all the students, it means being then in the mindset of solving all the problems first, instead of thinking about, oh, maybe I'm not able to do that, maybe start to complain, or maybe I just give it up. You know, as an Italian, I can understand that so many people like complain actually a lot first before to start to figure it out the problems. That's why creating these positive attitudes and make them first. Okay, I put myself here, then I need to figure it out the problem first. Then afterwards, I can complain and I can say like, oh, maybe it was difficult, it was bad. Okay, it doesn't matter. Like put this positive attitude, and then because of this positive attitude, incentivize the dialogue between among all the different students, and let them understand that they must communicate to each other. Communication is a thing that they are going to learn, especially in the future, that is so important. How much we know, like the communication about different departments, public, private organization, it's incredibly important. If they don't communicate, they waste a lot of time on figuring out problems, and maybe without communication, like figure it out maybe just maybe 1 minute, 10 seconds, oh, like we just forgot about to communicate about that. And then another thing that I think is really fundamental about to create this cultural harmonious environment is to evolve on the process. It means to change your mind based on what the situation is going, how the situation is evolving. And of course, you understand about how it's important to embrace it, as you can see from this beautiful slide, the cultural diversity. The more cultural diversity you have inside in your class, in your environment, and this bringing up more ideas and more communication, and more actually the possibility to bear and understand the others. That's why I think there are some basic fundamental things that you can apply to all the different methods. And then, of course, you can go deeper, definitely.
Yes. So As you said, Mr. Padovan, the different methods to summarize to establish cultural harmonious environment, you need first to build a caring community. We need to follow the student leadership, where all of us were leaders. The students are leading their life. Facilitators are leading students for successes, and principals and vice principals are leading facilitators to lead students for success. Though the key point is always students. So that's method number one, building a caring community, embracing, as you said, cultural diversity, setting always a positive tone in communication, always being positive. And of course, there's another important thing, differentiation by emotion. As we all know that we have different students, different cultures, different backgrounds, different mindset. We need to reach their heart in order to reach their mind. That's very important to establish cultural harmonious environment too, involving families and communities. And that's why school parent mutual partnership is a crucial layer in the multi-layered curriculum. It's very, very important layer. Setting clear expectations, culture and culture exchange and harmony being one of the catalysts defining the school's KPIs and SMART goals, providing continuous support, of course, that's very, very important too. And of course, as we said, culture and cultural harmony exchange are crucial layers in the multi-layered curriculum. Of course, we need to establish also a learning community based on classroom without borders. We talked about this already in the previous question, and add the famous S within the STEAM's education as covering social studies, culture, cultural exchange, and harmony. Integrate culture, cultural exchange, cultural harmony within all subjects based on the multi-layered curricular approach and one subject called knowledge. Cultural harmony, tolerance, positive thinking, and global being main traits of the 21st century learner profile nurtured within our students on daily basis. So once we follow all those important methods or all these strategies based on those titles, big titles that we have here, automatically we establish a cultural harmonious environment that will help our student, as we said, to reach and to become 21st century lifelong learners and leaders. So my next question, again, I just want to remind our educators that you can post your question in the Zoom box, Zoom chat box, and later on, of course, at the end, Mr. Padovan will answer you, or you can ask him at the end of the webinar your live questions, and we're more than happy to answer them all. And reminding you that next week you are going to receive your attendance certificates for joining this webinar and attending it. Now, the next question, Mr. Padovan, is about what was, in your opinion, what was the most fruitful cultural exchange event in your years of experience in organizing and conducting cultural harmony events? And what type of events do you recommend schools to organize to nurture culture education and 21st century learner profile traits within their students?
Thank you. I will start from the last question.
Yes.
I think all the schools they should establish general cultural events, and all these cultural events they can go deeper. And again, like very important, so important are the student exchanges, to organize the student exchanges from online to offline for as soon as possible based on budget and so on. These are incredibly important things to the opportunity for both students and teachers and school itself, like administrator of schools, like a school manager, to understand how the different programs and different schools operate. And be part of international fairs and meetings, I think, dedicated to the students. It's an opportunity to bring up the students together in an environment where the stakeholders are, actually they can talk to them and understand how it's going on about the world, maybe like job fairs, or different type of international fairs and meetings that are specific maybe for the school. The science school, the science fair that you can show actually the students what's going on in the world in that moment. And cultural competition, cultural events, anything that bring up a kind of little bit of spicy of competition among the students in order to flourish their mind like a little bit more and meet up with their fellow mates from different countries or different places, and more and more and more. And I put like some example of exchanges that I've done with the thinkers that were very fruitful and incredibly meaningful from my point of view. This was an art exchange that we ran just a few years ago, a couple of years ago in China. We bring up 3 Spanish artists and then mixed up with other 25 Chinese professional artists in Laoshan, it was close to Qingdao. in this very moment, there was a program run for 2 weeks. In these 2 weeks, the artists were able to understand each other, to understand how they paint, how is their way to see things, and so on. That was the purpose, actually. And for just for the first 3 days of the Chinese art, we were just looking at them, looking at these Spanish artists, how they were painting. We were just standing there, so many times actually in silence, and try to understand how these artists from Spain, from really far away, they are working. And then afterwards, it started to create a kind of group, a team. Like all the artists will start to mix up. Like, oh, I go with them, I go with this group. Oh, it doesn't matter, I stay here. Okay, of course with our support, everything. It was 24-hour support, but the beautiful thing was we were able to also to communicate each other, to break the barriers to the art language. But after, maybe it was after 4 or 5 days, every evening they kind of started to have a kind of after work, like kind of meet up, like having a little drink outside. They try to understand each other. That's also the part of the beauty of the exchange. It's not only about talking about art in this moment, but to say, or try to understand something outside of a life, because this influence, of course, the way we make art, our experience. Then another beautiful experience that I think is worth to mention, it was a similar one in Beijing. It was very last one before the pandemic, too much, because it was in January 2020. We were able to make it, but like other 2 Spanish artists, they came to Beijing. It was winter time, that's why you can see it was indoor. It was related to the portrait, the visual art of portrait. It was a little bit more about teaching in this case. It was less about a mix-up, also because it was more difficult because it was just an indoor, and that they didn't stay in the same place. But this experience is just like that one or before. It was a beautiful experience because I helped them to mix up again and to create a kind of great group, actually, even if it were just 2 artists, like from a different age, because one was around, he was in his 30s, and the other one is in his 60s, but you couldn't feel any difference about the age. Also, because the Chinese artists were, the ages were very different. It was around from 25 till 55, more or less, but there was no feeling about the age difference. And there was, at the end, even no feelings about the group. The group was just one, even if they were not able to speak, of course, the same language. And then, going back even to a younger age, for another experience that I think I would like to mention, it was another experience with younger students. Definitely was around the age of middle school, at the end of a middle school, then 15 years old, middle school in China. And it was about music. We ended up actually 4 classes from middle school, from a Chinese middle school to Italy, in order to have an experience about music. It was inside a conservatory, then as university level. And for them, it was just to experience how it was the teaching at the university level of music in Italy, in this case, in this conservatory of Parma. And this experience, it was very beautiful because it was like working in a group with people that you never met, and they don't speak the language, and maybe they have different methods. But at the same time, even if it was a very short experience because it lasted around 4 days, but they were able actually to manage to try to understand each other, say like, okay, through the music, language, we can make something meaningful and useful for everyone, for both of the teachers in Italy, the Chinese teacher, of course, because we were with them, and the students. And then the kind of the cake, at the end, it was a beautiful final concert that we organized for the students, for the Italian public. In this case, it was even a kind of another level where the students were able to show their skills to the public, to the general public in Italy, just random people that were happy to go there and see their concert. And plus the location was stunning because it was inside a beautiful castle in the countryside of Parma.
Excellent.
Then I think the very last one that I would like to mention is a different kind of experience that also the kind of idea that I can give you. We were running this program. In this case, the students were not able to meet up each other even online. It was an exchange based on art. So there was a group of Chinese students from primary school, and they start to make some paintings. They create their ideas, their art. Of course, maybe leaded by their own teachers, by the parents, and so on, but they created their own little piece of artwork. Then we bring actually these artworks and we give to an art high school in Italy. Then high school age was between 14 till 18, and the Italian students, they give their own idea, their own interpretation, making a new drawings about what these kids they made at the beginning. And then at the end, you have this confrontation between the two little artworks. Let's show them. So actually, definitely they were artworks because their level of skills was definitely really good. And finally, we put an exhibition in Italy and in China in order to understand and see what are the differences, their interpretation, the similarities also, because sometimes like they had the same interpretation of the same piece of art. This was a beautiful moment for both of them, even if they never met, to understand how they express themselves as a way to make art and to make it going from nothing. Yeah, that's also another idea that I could give, working through art.
Yep, and that's why we all here are concluding and that today cultural exchange are a major pillar in education, and perhaps one of the most I will not say easiest, I would say the most fruitful way, one of the most fruitful ways to make sure that our students are acquiring the right knowledge and skills to become lifelong learners. Yeah. My next question, Mr. Pandovan, it's about, in your opinion, let's say we want to create a framework, and we researched a lot of frameworks done by Emil Roland and by Casey Brown, and we deducted a certain framework that we're showing everyone now. In your opinion, what is the role model framework needed to integrate the country's culture and cultural exchange and harmony within the different schools' curricula? We need a framework for that. So what's the main framework for that, model framework, in your opinion?
Yeah, exactly. As you can see, of course, there is this beautiful slide that will give you like this beautiful model. I will start from my point of view. I will say from a beautiful center that it was think global and act local. That actually nowadays became even more act global and act local. Actually, because we are living actually in this global village, of course, definitely. And the most important thing, I think, in this role as a model framework is to understand the society. That's why it's not only thin and art global. It's like to bring real life cases, like to let them understand what's happening in the world. That it is helpful, of course, like to build up a more critical reaction, a more critical mind, and a more global mind. That's why I think there are also in some communities, that's what I heard, like especially in some, particularly in Mexico communities, where the parents actually they bring their children actually to their workplaces. They show actually basically to them how is the real life of working, how they can do it basically every day. And that's why I think it's also really important the role of the parents. The parents, they must work in this model frameworks because they are basically the creators of all our students, children, but definitely also the students. Their role is so important because they are actually the facilitators. Are people that bring it up and they make them and they build up their mind during the time. Definitely, there are some different frameworks you can put about, again, think act global and then act global as it is what we can bring it up and give to them, definitely.
Yes, I agree completely. And that's why this framework can help all our educators. They can implement it, as you said. A facilitator cannot differentiate by emotion, which is a very important pillar of differentiation today, if he or she is not a culturally responsive facilitator educator, because If as a facilitator, I am not culturally responsive, facilitate and educate, I cannot understand the culture of every student, I cannot differentiate by emotion, I cannot reach their hearts, and then we're going to have a lot of problems in the classroom. And that's why, number one, we need to facilitate and not to teach. Teaching is history now. We need to facilitate. We need to have classroom without borders. Another element of this role model framework is we need to have a student differentiated centered classroom. Culturally, as we said, responsive educators. We need to have a curriculum in which we need to make sure that country's culture and identity are crucial layers in the multi-layered curriculum model. We need to collaborate with families because we believe in school mutual partnership. One hand alone cannot clap. We need two hands. We need to critically recognize and address bias. We need to build a caring classroom community, promote and respect students' differences. Here we have the student servant leadership approach, and we're going to do a special webinar about the student servant leadership approach very soon. We need to have a real life and real world based learning, of course, or they will not be lifelong learner. They will just learn, memorize, and after 2 months they will forget everything. We need to model and communicate our expectations. We need to have a culturally mediated instruction, STEAMS education, and cultural sensitivity, nurturing tolerance and harmony as 21st century learner profile traits, embracing cultural diversity. Once we have all this, and we put them in all our different, integrate them, different pillars of our school, then we are going to have a culturally relevant education role model framework that will help us reach to and have our students apt for today and ready for tomorrow. So my next question, Mr. Padovan, is going to be about, in your opinion, and based on your years of experience, other than schools and universities, what are the other types of public or private entities that must contribute in cultural exchange and cultural harmony awareness within the different pillars of the society?
Yeah, I will be very direct to answer your question. I think every entity actually can bring it up, but I will add one thing. Every entity that is able to offer equality, that is able to give you something that first that you need is something that has a certain quality level. Because of course, not everyone could be, but not everyone can do it. I will definitely add. That's why I would bring it up some examples about how different entities that are other than of course schools and university can bring it up as something more, of course, and give you something to schools. Some out from our cases actually. For example, here there was a coffee company. Why? It's a private entity. It's a private entity that gave us actually the possibility to talk not only, of course, about the art of coffee is made, but also to tell stories, beautiful stories about the cultural exchange, how the coffee actually comes from different parts of the world, from the history. Actually, it was made. The seeds come from this place. Then we're toasted in another one. It's a beautiful cultural exchange moment actually to tell. Then another one, it was from Staff the Vetro, that is the art of glass and exhibition venue that is talking about the art of glass, in this case, in particular in Venice. And again, it's another way to explain how the art of glass has so much cultural exchange, so many actually different traits and tasks that they need up actually the glass that we know nowadays, and in this case in particular, the glass in Venice, another beautiful spot about the Silk Road that we mentioned before. And then another little case from another private entity was a fashion brand. Why the fashion brand you use as the case? Because still, you can use it and talk about fashion, how fashion is important, how fashion can influence us, how fashion really the history of the human being actually influence the way where we dress up nowadays. But we use exactly this little case in order to tell, yes, there is this really small company, a startup about fashion, but why is good? Because he was able to give something by her own, expressing herself because of her beautiful experience before with one of the greatest brands of Italy, like Armani, to work before. That's why you check the background of every single entity that you want to use, and if definitely the quality use it. It doesn't matter the service, but anyone can give you definitely something. And then, from my point of view, one of the most important, it was, of course, another one that was a cultural thing. But before, I want to mention this little case that it was about little. The band is not little, but for us, it was a little case that we used. It was a Ferrari, a supercar brand. But it was not for the purpose just to tell how good is this brand, of course, but we used like an art class. Use actually the design of this car like in order to let the kids understand that there is art inside this, and then you can try to make your own art about the cars, get inspired about this case, about this entity that definitely has quality, but still is another way to use something that you do not expect to use in a different another way around. Mm-hmm. And then from my point of view, from what actually I do, one of the most important pillars actually are the museums. So definitely, if you can see probably for the next slide, the museums. Why? Because through their collection, through what they have, they can tell the story, the local ones, but also the global ones. Because museums, in many cases, they have stuff. Let's call it a piece of art from all different parts of the world that I can tell you about these exchanges, or the things that they came in. And then I can do it through programs. We're running through their programs. That's right. In fact, we joined one of the programs through our group of kids. In this case, it was in Bologna, the Museum of Modern Art, that try to understand the modern art and do some workshops about that. Some exchanges, some exchanges that the museums can do with the other museums, with schools, and so on. And of course, a supermarket. And if I don't know them, if I don't know they exist, if I don't know they're beautiful for their collection, I know how I'm able to reach them. And because of that, they're able to spread this beautiful knowledge. Mm-hmm. That's why I bring it up another case that about a museum that we ran in 2018 to tell something about the museum to our group of art experts from China. Because a group from editors from art magazines and other artists. We ended up in a museum, a local museum in Treviso. We have about a 19th century art, mainly visual art. And they were able to meet not only the people that work in the museum, as like the directors, but also the other stakeholders that they operate the museum. In this case, it was the city council, how they support the museums, how they collaborate with museums to run cultural programs, and also the locals. In this case, in fact, you can see a Chinese artist with an Italian artist. Basically, the people that they go almost every day in the museum to get inspired, to understand the art of the past and so on, and of course a visit at the end, obviously, must be done at the end. That's why it was a case like to let understand totally a museum, how it works, works fully. That, from my point of view, are the most important entities that we use to talk about art and about our cultural exchange. And at the same time, we try to do also something a little bit more. We created the exhibitions, art exhibition, collaborating with art galleries or local museums in their spaces, and try to do this collaboration and create this connection. In this case, you can see it was an art exhibition about children's art from China. It was a selection of different artworks that we put it in an art gallery in Treviso, in the northern of Italy, and open to the public. We created the book, the catalogs, everything in order to create this cultural exchange, to let the people, the local people, see like what they are doing in China with children, what they are thinking, what they are creating, what's their idea, what's the mind. That's through this little example. That's why we call colors from China, like the color product from the children. Drawing was another project that you can bring it up, you can talk about it, definitely. Then, one of the most important, very important things that is so meaningful for us, that it gives to us a moral reward, definitely. They didn't get anything from that, but it was a moral thing that kind of fulfill our heart, let's say. After one of these exhibitions where we ran, because we made more actually this exhibition for colors from China. The local government was accepted. They really liked it because they supported this exhibition, but they were kind of astonished about one particular printing that you can see in the slide about this little cat, and also because of the age of the painter, because he was just 3 years old. And they asked like if they could keep it, if they could put it in the city hall. And talking after with the families, of course, of the kid, and so, yeah, yes, they agree. And nowadays you can see this is little piece of art, you definitely can call them. They call it is in next to the office of the city mayor. Before to enter, you must see this nowadays. It's a kind of, it's also a beautiful reward also for the kid in the future. Say, like, oh, I have something of my artwork is in that city hall now in Italy when I painted when I was 3 years old.
Yep. So, Mr. Padovan, culture and cultural exchange, cultural harmony will break all those walls, you know, all those walls are broken, and it will ease for us to make sure that our students are really ready to improve their life, to prepare a better tomorrow. Yeah. So my next question, Mr. Padovan, in general, in 21st century education, national and international culture are considered, as we say, major pillars and layers of the curriculum. How can you explain this notion and this reality today?
Yeah, nowadays, because the international experience is something that is required for all the future workers. But for all the students, they must have an international experience. It's even better if they can have this international experience since they were even in the middle school as possible, because it creates a better employee, a better work, a better researcher, and so on. And international experience is highly required from the companies, especially from the best companies, and also all other institutions. Then, does it open their mind? It opens their mind. It opens their mind in order like to be able to figure it out, different problems from different ways. Kind of like I would say, always say, like a thinking out of the box. Like have a more international experience and be more cultural mixed. Help them like to understand the world in a different way, and also increase your personal knowledge, like understand and know more about the world, and make yourself like a more knowledgeable person. And then you can also, during the business meetings, during your casual talking, you have more arguments, you have more ideas, you can talk about more different things with your colleagues, with your friends, and so on. Plus, if you actually, as I mentioned, it's even better to have this international experience since you were young, actually, since you are in the high school or middle school. This also gives you access to foreign university. You are already able maybe to speak a foreign language, or even more, plus more. Like so, also like you are the mixed kids that are able to speak in the 3-4 languages. And this creates also a successful manager for the future, like as just mentioned, to access to the best companies. And this experience definitely will give you like a big success to an international market. That's why also I bring it up to some few cases that we can talk about the international experience that you can gain since you were a student. One of these cases it could be is called Intercultura, like a no-profit company that organizes student exchanges abroad with the events. Sometimes you can spend 1 year overseas in other countries and spend this year in a school, like and be a student, like a local students, being there, like among them and study with them. Definitely, is an experience you have the possibility you should take. Another one is the beautiful programs that we call Erasmus Plus. That is European Union programs that allow all the students to exchange and to go in different universities in the European Union. As you can see, how it grew up during the years from this crash. More countries are joining the European Union, more countries join the Erasmus Plus programs, and then more students were able to study in the different universities. There are possibilities. You should take it definitely in the European universities. Then I added another case from a private entity, a totally private entity in this case, that it was called association. It was organizing internships in the Asia and the UK. that's why it's another possibility. Is like if you have if you can just go and look for companies that organize internships, maybe during your university period or afterwards, after the university period, just as the first international experience. If you didn't have before, you want to have even more. And this is just an example of internship organized in a different parts of Asia. And if now you think maybe, oh, because of the pandemic it's so difficult, or no, like in fact this company changed and they created like virtual internships. I'm sure there are so many other companies that are doing that, and they can help you like with these programs where you can work actually from distance. In this case, because of the situation, uh, like an intern for an international company, but at the same time is another great experience that you can put definitely your CV, but also in your personal CV, your knowledge, in your heart.
Yeah, yes.
I would definitely suggest that. Definitely is very important.
Yeah, and that's why, as we said, and we remind again that global mindedness, cultural harmony are major layers of the multi-layered curriculum, because today, as we all know, what is the curriculum? The curriculum is whatever the student is going to gain as knowledge and skills to face the 21st century challenges and overcome them. And that's why that's very, very important. And we talk about this and we say again, it's very important for our students to have, and for us as a school to have, global mindedness, cultural harmony in our multi-layered curriculum. That's very, very important. And that's why, as we see here, we have the Classroom Without Borders framework, which is a very, very important pillar of education nowadays. In this framework, as you see, all highlighted in yellow are in a way, directly or indirectly, nurtured and reinforced by culture and cultural harmony. For example, satellite of school campuses. If I'm going to send my students once every 2 weeks in the history class or any other class, art class, to go to museums, to work as museum guides. We talked about this in a webinar, especially about 3 months ago. International virtual combined classrooms, countries, identity, cultural harmony area or room, ISLA's internship satellite, to have internship hours for them for 4 weeks, for 5 weeks, for 6 weeks, students council meetings, learning resource centers, teams education, facilitating not teaching, one subject code knowledge, student leadership, real life based learning, all those teams education, all those are nurtured and reinforced by culture and cultural harmony. If we don't have culture and cultural harmony and cultural exchange in our curriculum, it's very difficult for us to reach those very important 21st century needed frameworks to make sure that our students are ready for the future. My next question will be about how can cultural harmony nurture the 21st century leadership traits within our students, and why cultural harmony is considered worldwide one of the most important pillars to build a better tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely, like the education again is one of the most important things that help our societies to develop from so many different points of view, from definitely for any point of view that I can think about it. The education is fundamental, like to stimulate the growth, because it increases the innovation. Like more better educated societies is able to bring it up more innovation. It's able to become more productive because it's able to understand more how they can make it shorter. Because as we talked about in the previous slides, how important is the communication, like to communicate, to do a dialogue. To think about I'm working in a cultural diverse world and to get more knowledge, then I became much more productive, and that I can, and then definitely this human capital being created that is more productive, more innovative, can stimulate the economic growth, but also at the social level. They create more a community participation at the local level and at the national level, to more social equality. And then environmental sustainability. How is so important, like nowadays, this topic. Because definitely a better educated society is more conscious about the world that we live in. And then it's going to take care more about the different ways how to make our planets, let's say, more green, like thinking about more recycling, thinking about more of the wasted and how to save energy and so on. that's why I just put it our little contribution where we have done in just 3 years ago. We made up our group of a group of students from China, and during a larger trip, actually a longer trip, but we had a stop. This topic was about talking about environmental sustainability, and in that case, how a local place, one of the city in the north of Italy, in this case, the Treviso, he was working about the recycling system, how they sorted all the wasted, because their recycling are almost at the 95% level of recycling. Basically, they recycle almost everything. Say how they did, how they reached this, and how can you do it? And then the students, they can really probably remember this experience and then talk about that with their parents, with their fellow mates in the schools and so on. Then again, it is really important to educate people in order to create a better environment from any point of view.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. And that's why, as we see this famous wall, in order to destroy this wall, we need cultural education, we need cultural harmony and global mindedness. We need it to destroy the different bricks of the famous wall. Teacher-centered classroom, we don't need anymore. We don't need them anymore. Books-guided curricula, we don't need anymore. We don't need only to give them knowledge, we give them knowledge and skills to our students. We don't need any more non-differentiated student-centered, non-student-centered and non-differentiated learning environment. We don't need any more only summative, we need summative and formative. We don't need any more no real life-based education, many subjects. We need one subject taught knowledge. We need real life-based education. We don't need any more students memorizing machines. We need the students to become lifelong learners because we want to facilitate for them this process and not just to teach them. We don't need any more complete absence of positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is a major, major, major pillar to succeed, and we need a very fruitful school-parent mutual partnership. And to break this wall, we need culture. We need cultural harmony. We need cultural exchange. We need global mindedness. That's very, very important. As we see here, if we want really for our students to approach our student-servant leadership approach, so that we have our real life-based learning, one subject taught knowledge, classroom without borders, multi-layered curriculum, mingling formative and summative assessment, leadership assessment for differentiation by emotion, self-governance, collaborative planning, as we talk about all this during the whole academic year this year with Mr. Fouad and Ms. Aline during our all webinars. For all this, you need cultural harmony and cultural exchange and culture. For all this, you need a culturally responsive facilitators and educator, as we talk about in our previous slides. So all this will lead us to the legacy dream students and approach framework. And it's very, very important to create a 21st century leader, 21st century lifelong learner. Again, for this, we need cultural harmony, cultural exchange, and culture. So as we see, dear educators, slowly we are tackling more, and we are concluding that culture, cultural harmony, cultural exchange are today main pillars in education if we want to prepare 21st century leaders right for today and ready for tomorrow. My next question, Mr. Pandovan, some schools nowadays are establishing partnerships with other schools in different countries and conducting combined classrooms with their sister schools. Do you consider this approach a healthy and fruitful approach to integrate culture and international cultural harmony within the schools, and why?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Definitely, I would think it is a fruitful and healthy approach that the schools, organization in the university, they should definitely take. My advice, and from point of view, like all the schools, in particular at the university, because they're able to establish greater, like, of course, exchange programs. They should take it like step by step, so like little by little. Establish like maybe some international programs and some partnership at the beginning, starting with teacher exchange, then student exchange. They can start from the online, from the online to the offline. We going like a little by little, and then also, of course, you can go abroad when you can start to establish probably an office there. That's why I bring it up here, the example of the Suzhou office of Campus University of Venice that established completely an office in China in order to understand better how it's working there, what's going on, what we should improve, what we should cut. And this is actually give already to the universities a possibility to go to the next level. Because of course we have already a lot of exchange programs, but be there in that place, in that country, of course, it give you a different sensibilities, definitely. And then you can go to the next one, that is of course the last one, maybe not, like we don't know, of course, it will be a possibility in the future. That's why I put it this beautiful campus that is the Duke University in Kunshan, still in China, that have established their own campus in China about these universities, mainly about medicine. But then again, this is definitely after so many steps that they took before, definitely because probably it was a talk that lasted years and started from a very little till these results and this construction of this beautiful campus of these universities overseas. Of course, these are just examples. You have to act and understand, of course, where you're going, understand the culture, understand what you're doing, and do these baby steps and do it little by little, but do it because it's fruitful and active.
Thank you very much. And that's why, Mr. Padovan, international virtual combined classrooms today are very, very important for STEAM's education, for the multi-layered curriculum, helping students exceed their learning objectives, for Classroom Without Borders, for real-life-based education, for nurturing the 21st learner profile. And for this, again, you need a major pillar here, which is cultural harmony, cultural exchange, and culture. And of course, again, plus we need the internship partnership with different public and private entities, the ESLAs, as we saw some examples. It will improve the school-parent mutual partnership, real-life education again, helping students reach and exceed learning outcomes. Again, for this, you need cultural harmony and cultural exchange and culture. As we see for all the different aspects of the 21st century learning and facilitating environment and education pedagogical approach, we need culture, we need cultural harmony, we need cultural exchange to reach our objectives in this 21st century learning education. Now, my next question is going to be about STEAM's education. All schools nowadays are adopting a STEAM's education. Do you believe in adding the S, reflecting mainly for culture, and transform STEAM to STEAMs, and why?
Yeah, definitely, yes. I think it should be added like the hats, the STEAMs, as we know, like the STEAM, they started like the STEM, then they have the A, that is the art, that it gives the possibility to the students to think in a more creative way, of course, using the language of math, science, technology, and so on. But of course, adding an S, it became like actually like a kind of a perfect circle that you can close it, that you can understand about how the different cultures and they think, they act, to it even became an act even more creative than before. And using, of course, these basics that were so important about the technology and math, adding the art became more creative, as became more culturally comprehensive and understand all the differences and how they think. Yeah, definitely. I think they should be added.
And that's why we can say very easily that culture is one of the major catalysts that will link those 6 pillars of STEAM's education, that, as you said, science, technology, engineering, art, math, and culture. So culture is a catalyst that will not only, it's one of the pillars of STEAM's education, that's why we need to add the S, and at the same time, it's a catalyst that will link those 6 pillars. And here we have some examples. For example, art playing in different STEAM's project. For example, in science, fusion of 2 cultures, it can be a STEAM's project, culture is there. Fusion of science and culture, art. In science, culture is there. How can I prepare a Chinese medicine? Culture is there. Technology, how Romans manufactured their shields, culture is there. How Romans built the catapults, that culture is there. Engineering, I want to become a Greek engineer, a project, STEAM's project, culture is there. How to become an Egyptian pyramid engineer, again, culture is there. Can we build today a wall like the Great Wall of China? Again, culture is there. In art, how to create a short film reflecting similarities between Chinese and Western culture, culture is there. How can we explore the mathematics behind the Mona Lisa? Culture is there. In mathematics, how can I be one of Pythagoras students? Culture is there. I want to become one of Al-Khwarizmi students. Again, culture is there. Social studies, culture. Where are the unknown flying objects? Who is the 21st century Napoleon Bonaparte? How can I become one of Marco Polo students and followers? So everything here, we find culture exchange, and cultural harmony. And that's why we need that S. We need STEAM's education today. We need culture as a catalyst, as one of the pillars of STEAM's education that will lead to one subject called knowledge. Now, my last question, and then we are going to answer to the questions from the different educators today that joined us. What are the different constraints and challenges that the world is facing today to reach the needed benchmark of international cultural harmony?
Yeah, I will give like this answer. Like from my point of view, is the most important thing is and also the challenge that we face is like to give access to the information, to let the people understand that there is a possibility. Actually, that's what I mean. To tell them like there is a possibility that is bigger than your backyard, that you can go abroad, you can understand that there is a different culture, there is a different place where you can study, that you can learn, and there is a different knowledge that can make yourself not only like a better student, but also a person like with more knowledge and better understanding of all the world, and make this possibility real. Like, because just tell them there are this information, there are these places around the world or even in your own country that you can go, but if this possibility is not real, the people, they don't have access, they are not able to do it, this just stay like a dream. That's why I think it's really important the role of the school as a facilitators, people that they can give a suggestion, but also they can help maybe like through their programs, or they can find some scholarships and so on for the students that are definitely outstandings. The role of a philanthropist, the role of a government with different programs that can run, a philanthropist company, everyone that can help can make this possibility not just a dream. So really, again, tell them there is something that is bigger than your backyard and make this possibility real, not just stay like a dream.
Thank you very much. And as a conclusion, can we really break the wall between educational entities, schools, and 21st century learner students? Can we really integrate STEAM education within the 21st century lifelong learning process? Can we really reinforce the different layers of our multi-layered curriculum leading to one subject called knowledge? Can we really invest for a better tomorrow based on our 21st century principled future leaders? Yes, we can, but we need the help of many pillars of our society, and mainly the help of culture, cultural exchange, and cultural harmony, as Mr. Pandovan explained during the next 1 hour, 20 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Pandovan. And those are Mr. Pandovan's email addresses. If you have any questions for him, feel free to later on ask him those questions. It's all displayed now on your slide here. And of course, I just want to remind you some of our upcoming education events in Huan Quan Village. With Ed Union, we collaborate hosting the English Drama Summer Camp, which facilitate English through drama in 5 days, 4 nights. Phase 1, July 2024. Phase 2, July 27 and 31. And again, special thanks to Mr. Pandovan. We were honored with your presence today. Special thanks to Huan Quan Village for hosting those very, very important webinars that will help our educators reach their benchmark and exceed them. And thank you for attending it.